hope you've had a great week. I wanted to go over some practice questions for exam 2. So we're going to start with number 1, and we've got a population mean of 50 with a standard deviation of 5, and then we need to figure out what x is if z is 1.5. So we know that we're going to use our x formula instead of the m formula just because we're given the value of x. So we'll use standard deviation instead of standard error. We'll plug the numbers in that we've got and multiply by 5 on either side to get rid of our denominator. And that gives us 7.5 equals x minus 50. Then we'll add 50 to each side and determine the value of x, which is going to be 57.5. So if our mean is 36 and x equals 30 and z equals negative 0.6, what is the standard deviation? So we've got the same formula, but we're going to either have to tweak it around a little bit or just solve for our standard deviation. So we'll divide each side by negative 0.6. We come up with a standard deviation that equals 10. If the standard deviation is 5 and z equals 2, how many points above the mean is z? So 0 is going to represent our mean, and z equals 1 is 1 standard deviation above the mean. So that will be 5 points. Well, the difference between 1 and 2 is also 1 standard deviation, so that will be another 5 points. So we'll take 5 points times the z and get 10 as the amount of points that z equals 2 is above the mean. Next, if n equals 25 and the population mean equals 45, standard deviation is 10 and x is 51, what is z? We'll take our regular z formula and plug the numbers that we have in for it. So 51 minus 45 divided by 10 is going to give us 6 divided by 10. So z equals 0.6. If our mean is 25 and our standard deviation is 2, what is the minimum score required to be in the top 20%? We know that our z critical for the tail of 20, the upper tail of 20% is going to be z equals 0.84. So we'll plug that into our z equation and solve for x. So x minus 25 divided by 2 equals 0.84. Next, we'll multiply each side by 2 to get rid of our denominator. And that gives us a value of 1.68 equals x minus 25. So we'll add 25 to each side to get our value for x. So x equals 26.68. What z-score separates the top 80% of scores from the bottom 20% of scores? This one can be a little bit difficult, but we'll look at it conceptually. In our unit normal table, a z of 0.84 we know separates 80% from 20%. But the 80% is in the body and 20% is in the upper tail. The problem is we're not looking for the top 20% of scores. We're looking for the bottom 20% of scores. So we know that what's in the positive z is mirrored in the negative z. So a negative 0.84z is going to give us the bottom 20% of scores that we're looking for, where the 80% is to the right of the tail and 20% is to the bottom of the tail. So the correct answer for a question of this nature would be negative 0.84. The next question asks, what proportion of a normal distribution is in the tail beyond z equals negative 1.04? First, we'll look at the results from our unit normal table, where z equals 1.04, and draw a conceptual drawing of what that really looks like on a pictorial. On our unit normal table, it shows us that z equals 1.04 shows about a 15% in the upper tail. And so since that's mirrored on the other side, a z of negative 1.04 would show a tail on the left of 0.1492 and a body on the right of 0.8508. Our next question deals with proportions and asks, if there are 20 green marbles and 40 yellow marbles and equals 4 random sampling with replacement, what is the probability of choosing green on the third pick? Well, since we have a sampling with replacement, that means the probability on the third pick is the same as the probability on the first pick, which is going to be 0.33. Now we'll take our standard error formula and move it around a little bit so that we have a standard error of 2 points and a standard of deviation of 18. We need to solve for n. So 2 equals 18 over the square root of n. We'll multiply each side by the square root of n to get rid of our denominator. And then we'll divide each side by 2 to get our square root of n on one side. And then we find that the square root of n equals 9. Then we'll square the square root of n, and we'll square 9 to determine the value of n. And n equals 81. Well, I hope this helped you on preparing for exam 2. Good luck, and hope to see you next week. Take care.